And good afternoon. So thank you guys for joining today. Today our webinar is Get 'em, Got 'em, Keep 'em, a practical guide to customer experience brought to you by Cargus. Today's speakers are Esther Angel and Steph Schreier. Esther is Vice President of CRM at Cargus. She has more than a decade of experience in the oil and gas industry within sales, marketing, and business development roles. Esther is passionate about helping businesses use technology to enhance and maximize their sales and marketing strategies. Steph has been with Cargus for 18 years, and her entire career has been centered on customers and relationships. As Cargus Energy's Director of Customer Experience, Steph and her team are dedicated to the relationship and experience customers have within our company here. Steph has a passion for helping people, solving problems, and is a constant advocate for an exceptional customer experience. And so just a few housekeeping items before we do get started. We encourage you guys to use the questions pane on your webinar control panel to post questions throughout the webinar. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation and we will respond to your submissions. So feel free to put them in throughout the webinar and we will get to them at the end. In the handout section of your control panel, you will find a link to download the slides from today's presentation. And the webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with you about an hour after the event ends. The recording will also be posted on the cargusenergy.com website. So let's get started today with today's webinar.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Emily. Really appreciate it. So if you do see us looking around at each other, actually, we're in the same room, funny enough. So Steph and I are sitting across from each other. So our hope is that when we look at each other, it looks like we're looking at you as well. So really thankful that everyone joined us today. Wish we could see your faces in person, but hopefully another time. Hopefully a lot of you are planning to come to Summit in a few weeks, and then yes, we will see you there. So let's touch and jump into our agenda. So here's our agenda, what we're going to be covering today. And we really want to talk to start off with just why customer experience matters. So why is this important to your business? We're also going to be going through defining customer experience versus customer service. What's really that difference between the two things? How are they different? Examples of segmentation. Well, this might be a new concept for some. If you were at the NPGA conference where we or discuss this topic, you're going to hear a lot of the same things. So, you can either let that sink in a little bit more or tune us out for a minute either way. We're also going to be looking through tools to make it happen. So when we think about customer segmentation, creating customer experiences, what are the tools that you're going to need to make that happen? And then we're going to kind of go into what any good organization should be doing to get their programs for customer experience, segmentation, all of these things started. All right, so let's keep it moving. So why customer experience matters? Well, let's start with what is customer experience, and that is the overall perception and interaction of your customer with your company and offerings. Now, this starts at initial awareness and then moves all the way through to post-purchase evaluation. So what are some of the examples of things that makes this interaction happen, what makes this experience happen? The thing is, and we'll talk more about this, it's not always the things that are within your control, for instance, your website. It could be about what their mom said about you, some crazy experience that they had, a truck that they saw driving down the road that, cut them off. It could be the mess that your technician made at the house. All of these things actually build to create a customer experience. So it's very holistic. Now, why does customer experience matter? So I'll let you take a guess. We're not going to actually do a live poll on this, but what percentage of customers are more loyal due to customer experience? I'll let you kind of think of what you might think that might be. 67%. So customer experience, CX is another term for it, drives over 2/3 more customer loyalty than brand and price combined. So here's another good one. For every customer complaint, how many unhappy customers do you think you have? 26. You have 26 unhappy silent customers. How many customers would pay 16% price premium for better customer experience? So this isn't 16% of the customers would pay more. What percentage of customers would pay 16% more for your services? 86%. So 86% of your customers will pay more money for an incredible customer experience. And then lastly, this should really drive it home. How much more expensive do you think it is to acquire a customer than to retain one. You don't need to answer stuff you already know the answer. Okay, just making sure. Seven times more. So if you think of every dollar that you spend to retain the customer that you have, it's 7 times that amount to acquire new ones. So this is really setting the stage, I hope, for why customer experience matters and creating an experience that means something to your customers. So we're going to jump over now to Steph, and she's going to walk us through what are we talking about when we think about customer service versus that customer experience journey.
Thank you, Esther. Well, now that we know why customer experience matters, we're going to dig into some additional concepts. So let's get started. I think a lot of you might have seen something similar to this if you in any type of kind of like customer experience, customer service type of like seminars or anything. They talk about the customer journey. Well, what does that really mean, right? So I'm going to kind of go through this example that might be meaningful for you about what prior experiences, awareness, research and evaluation, all the way through advocacy might mean, right? So let's take a young new homeowner who maybe used to rent, but now just took over somebody's, existing retailer for propane, and it's getting close to winter. They are, starting to get ads in the local Clipper magazine or something, and so they're starting to think, oh, maybe I should be shopping around. So that's kind of that, that awareness phase that, they're looking out there on social media and so forth. They're also like, okay, well, research and evaluation. They're maybe making some phone calls, they're going online, they're asking their neighbors and their friends about different places and their experiences with maybe propane retailers. Well, then they decide to sign up. So they call you up and say, okay, I'm ready to have you guys be, my propane source. And they talk to your CSR, right? And then the CSR gets them onboarded with all the different types of things. Maybe there's, maybe they're going to get like a new tank or something like that. So then they become a customer, but then maybe they, they just told you like, oh, darn, I forgot to tell you, my parents are moving in with us for a year, right? So all that information about usage and everything might go out the window. So they're concerned now with all this extra use that they will need, can I afford all these big, these drops and so forth. And so then they start talking to you about budgets. So that's all in that support phase. So then imagine, you pop open your Google reviews one day, you see you have this really nice review from this customer, and they tell the story about how they were away, that their parents, looked at the magnet on the refrigerator, they called because they needed service of their hot water heater or something, and your technician was super nice to them, even though they weren't the, the actual owners of the house. So all of these different things are kind of that full circle example of what a customer journey looks like. And so each of those interactions I described are actually touch points, an opportunity you get to create an experience with your customer along the way of the journey. So what is, there's touch points and experience. So those individual transactional items that I talked about are those touch points, but all those touch points, they add up to what we consider the customer experience, right? Those are cumulative. And over time, that's really want to focus not only just on those individual customer satisfaction moments when you are one-to-one, but looking at it from holistically across the journey and making sure that you're managing that expectation, not just the individual touch points, but also looking at them cumulatively. So how you know this now, that there's just touch points, your customer satisfaction moments, you're looking at the customer experience across the journey. And what's important to a customer in those individual experiences as well as across the journey? Well, there's been studies and academic articles and everything around what's important to customers. And there's really 3 main drivers to a good customer experience. There's consistency, empathy, and effort. So when we talk about consistency, that's really like, are you kind of keeping your promises? Like, is if they're looking at your website and saying, oh, great, I really want to do business with this particular brand, is that what they are getting when they call you on the phone, right? Is it that same kind of, like living up to what you've actually put on paper for your customers? And then empathy and effort, right? Well, where are you learning about your customers so you could actually meet them where they're at? Are you capturing different things about the customer when they call up on the phone so you can continually build that rapport and that relationship? And then effort. There's all sorts of great articles out there that actually, what leads to greater customer satisfaction and greater customer retention and loyalty isn't about all the free stuff and other things that you give them. It's about how easy are you to work with. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind for those individual touch points as well as the whole customer experience. So another look at this journey, right? We kind of had that other one, but looking at all the different touch points now on the map, not all of these things are controlled by you, right? Some of them are, and you want to take a note of those. So the things that you can't control, which are, what's going out there in social networks or out there in the ether, what the neighbors say about you, you want to monitor that, but you don't necessarily, have any control over that. But the things you can control along the journey, you really need to dig in and figure out how are you optimizing those things? How are you making those particular touch points better? And that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so one tool that you can use to really help you optimize that customer journey is customer segmentation. And I'm going to introduce you to a concept where there is different journeys for different customers, okay? Because when you think about the whole journey and you think about your entire customer base, it might be completely overwhelming for you to think about how am I going to look at all the different steps, all the different ways of interacting with the customer when there's so many different types of customers out there. So we're going to look at putting those customers in kind of different segments and creating different journeys for those customers. So what is segmentation? If you're in marketing, as our friend Emily is, this is very much, like marketing 101, right? You have your customers and you have your different segments, everything from demographics to, behaviors to values-based. What I'm going to focus on, one of the big ones from a customer experience standpoint, is really around like the economics or the values-based, right? Looking at your groups of customers and how they're interacting with you and what kind of, what different products and services they might already be using from you, okay? Backing up for 1 second, sorry, got ahead of myself. Sorry, we're in one of the lights room, so excuse our little.
Apparently we're not talking with our hands.
Apparently, I'll try
the motion sensor to pick us up.
So when you think about your customers and how you're interacting with them, we've all heard of the 80-20 rule, right? This goes back to the whole values base, that 20% of your customers make up 80% of your profits, right? And so, but we want all of our customers. We don't want to, lose any of them. So you have to pay attention, obviously, to all of your customers. And that's why it's important to kind of maybe put them in those segments, create those different journeys, so you can then optimize how you're interacting with those customers based on that information. So I'm going to introduce you to maybe a couple of examples that's out there kind of in the wild. We are big fans of our friends at Zendesk. Those of you who work with us know that we use them for support and operations and other things. So with Zendesk, they have a very outward model that kind of helps you pick your own segment if you are the customer, right? So as a customer, you can choose to interact with them and create a service levels based on what you find valuable as a customer, right? Basically what you might want to be paid for based on how you want to be served. So they put this out there in the ether that these are the different things that they can interact with you on, the type of services and how they provide them, and then you as the customer get to choose which plan or which way that you want to interact with them. So that's one example that's very outward facing. So another example is, this is an example of a finance consulting company where they have their different clients. And this is more internal focused for their associates and their advisors. So they have actually segmented their tiers of clients, in A, C, and B customers. But looking at the maybe the type of advisor that would be working with these customers. Customers that are in the C category might be working with their associate advisors, or customers that are in the A category are working with their partners and senior advisor. Now, most likely this is not like published for those customers, but these customers know like which tier they're probably in. So if I'm, in tier C as a client of theirs, but I really want to, a different kind of experience, I could have that discussion with them, and most likely they would gear me toward, the monthly or quarterly retainers, and that would get me a different service level that maybe I really want, right? But this gives the framework for the individuals in that financial firm to kind of how they are going to be treating their customers, as well as opportunities for customers to potentially go between tiers. So segmentation, why, some signs that you might need this, right? So are you always kind of fighting fire drills? Are you managing to squeaky wheels? Those are the people that get all of your attention because they're the ones that are calling you all the time or maybe making those noise. Do you potentially know who your top 5 troublemakers are, right? So if all of your people, your CSRs and everyone like run away when they see a certain phone, number come across the screen, that might be a sign that you might need to look at segmentation. Or is it a first come, first serve for everybody, that there's no differentiation, no matter if it's your A+ customer versus the one that hardly ever buys from you? Do they get the same level of service or get the same level of attention? So where do you start with segmentation, especially around this concept of customer lifetime value, right? Looking at your customers, how they're spending with you, what types of services and products are they buying from you, or is it just this particular offering, or are they really going across your whole menu of items, right? So it's important for you to kind of do that data analysis. So I put on this slide some examples. You can Google lifetime value of a customer or customer lifetime value, and there's a couple different ways to go about calculating that. But the real important thing is that you do some analysis, you do some reporting, you identify which of your customers are out there that provide the largest amount of value and which ones might have different levels, okay? And then based on that, you can kind of move on to implementing some different ways or different journeys or different touch points based on that information. So step 1, identify your high lifetime value customers, as well as maybe there's some other tiers that come out of that. Then you have to align your team around those tiers. Create that empathy, and by empathy I mean understanding what's important to those customers, defining those relationships, and making sure that your team understands what drives each of those particular segments and how they're going to service them, what type of touch points, and how they're actually going to do that work. And then define your promises. This is really the journey I was talking about, right? We showed one journey, but in these cases, you might have 2 or 3 journeys that you have put out there for your teams and your customers based on those service levels. And these are different promises, different touch points for different groups. And then, most importantly, going back to that, remember this couple slides ago, which what's important to your customers is being consistent, keeping those promises. So identifying what your service levels are, what other types of ways you're going to be interacting with those customers. And then once you've defined those, make sure you're able to meet those 100% of the time or darn close, because that's really what's going to matter to your customers. Okay, so what might that look like for you, right? Potentially based on their tier, maybe you don't give everyone emergency service. Maybe that is reserved for a certain segment of your customers. Targeted customer appreciation events. Maybe everybody gets that kitchen magnet, right? But a certain subset gets invited to the ball game. And priority scheduling, again, maybe based on like which segment you'd want to ask that or have that service for them. And then personalized outreach. It doesn't mean you're ignoring any of your customers. You're absolutely engaging with them. But there's different channels, there's different ways with which you're engaging with them. And your top customers, that 20% you're talking about, those are the ones that you want to devote those resources and calling and making sure that you're developing those relationships. So to summarize, always keeping your promises, right? Because that's those touch points, those are those interactions that keep your customers with you. But promises can be different for different groups of customers, and that's okay. But what it's not, and as someone who has lived in customer service their whole life, and let me be clear, what segmentation is not is lesser or poor service. You are still meeting the needs and the demands of your customers, right? You're keeping your promises, and it is not about any lesser or poor services, just different journeys and different experiences for those customers potentially. Okay, so how do we do this, right? How can you actually execute on this? Well, luckily, my friend Esther has all the answers on this. Go for
no
it,
pressure,
Esther.
no pressure or anything here. I have all the answers. So I want to refer back to something that Steph, you just said.
Mhm.
You were talking to us about consistency.
Yes.
Right? And we were talking about empathy.
Mhm.
And then we're going to go back to other engagement, right? So
Yes.
how are we engaging people? Are we staying in contact with them? But are we consistently staying in contact? And is the message that we have with them consistent? And there's something, and you introduced me to this term. And the term is, do you feel like you know me? You
Mhm.
know me.
You know me.
You know me. And it's interesting because this historically, and I'm gonna ad lib a little bit here. So
It's okay, we have time.
We have time. Historically, we've done this, and especially for the oil and gas industry. So we mentioned oil and gas industry. I worked in the upstream oil and gas industry for over 10 years. And I find so fascinating, it's very similar all the way through being a part of the retail, delivering propane and heating oil and delivery industry. It's very similar. We rely on people. We treasure and value those relationships with. And part of it, I think, is there's a lot of suffering sometimes in the energy industry. Right. There's ups and downs of the market, and we suffer together, so we stick together, and there's camaraderie there. But we rely on people. The challenge is becoming, in today's day and age, there's so much information coming. There's so many interactions that we can be having and that our customers expect to have with us, that we can't be consistent in the same way. And in addition, layer on top of that a lot of the workforce that we relied on to have those relationships and to bring that consistent customer experience, they're retiring, they're leaving the industry, they're moving on. So how do we create consistency, engagement, and empathy in a world that's constantly changing? So that's what I want to touch on with the tools for the journey. So when we think about the tools for the journey, let's start with this. Customer interactions. Where are you having those engagement moments? How are people engaging with you? So where do they share their data? So we're not talking about storage yet, we'll get there, but sharing. So like portals, they might share website submissions and social media and reviews or surveys, whatever, they're having interactions with you. So now they're sharing information. So this would exist in platforms like WordPress or your other CMS, like a HubSpot CMS, or even Facebook or social media interactions. So we have these interactions where they're sharing that data, but then how do we capture and store the data? Now this is critical when you think of, do you know me? Are you empathetic to where I am? So I've engaged with you, I talked to you, I shared information with you. Are you using that to understand me? So where do you capture and store that data? This is typically stored in a few different places. It can be a CRM, such as Salesforce or HubSpot, or it can be within your ERP, such as Cargus Energy. So you have your what we call CRM, you can call them whatever other terms, but customer relationship management tools, maybe your marketing automation platform, some sort of operational system like an ERP or financial database, and then your customer service tools, whether that's Zendesk or something else, again, that you're using. So you're capturing that data, and this speaks to your ability to understand your customer. And then let's talk about analyzing that information. So what is most important to know? Now, this is where it comes to consistency. So if we can take that data and do something with it, what's the most important thing that we need to know? How do we know that it's right? And how do we look at that data and make something of it? This is where tools such as leveraging your Cargus or your HubSpot, your customer data, you have all these platforms with this data. So they've shared all this data, you've stored all this data, and then you want to review all this data. The challenge really becomes this: how does a customer currently travel through your technology? So when we look at these different platforms and these different places that information is being shared, stored, and analyzed, how consistent is it? How confident are we in that consistency? So it's really critical when you're thinking about technology and all the tools, that these tools exist. really relying on your organization and experts within your organization and outside of it to make sense of that data and make sure that you're not losing that customer experience, really not losing that consistency of message. So I want to give you just a little bit of an example of this. So let's go back to the new homeowner, right? They came and they shared information on a web form. They contacted your CSR. Did they have to repeat their information when they got set up as a customer? Those are the types of things we should be thinking of. When we captured information at who was actually at the household or what equipment do they have, did they have to repeat themselves when they called in to get service? When your technician showed up, did he know where the equipment was that maybe you guys installed? It's being consistent, all those little touch points, all those little places that people touch us. And in addition, the review. So when they left you that really nice review, did you track that back and send them a thank you note? Maybe you responded online saying, hey, thanks for the nice review, but did you send them a card that says thanks for the nice review? There's lots of ways that tools help you automate this. So touching back one more time to the tools, they really help you become more empathetic, but they also automate the process for you so you can be more consistent, and you're creating that consistency. Yes, you want buy-in from your whole organization, we'll talk about that, but it's also creating tools so you're not doing that manually all of the time, because we don't got time. All right, so let's talk a little bit about getting started. So how do we get started on this? And Steph and I, we sat down, we chatted with this, we went over this a few times. This getting started map could really kind of be for almost any new initiative, really anything. You know, I'm gonna have my children pack
for everything.
I'm gonna have my children pack their own lunch. All right, let's assess. So let's look, we're gonna walk through each one of these: assessing, identifying, planning, getting buy-in, partnering, executing, and then you really start that process all over again. Because when we think about customer experience, and honestly, when you think about your business as a whole, if you think it's good enough, if you think that, it's good enough and we don't really have areas for improvement, those are the places where your competitors really are going to come in and steal market share. So the first step is assessing where you are. So think about this as understanding those places. Where are you capturing that feedback? Where is that feedback coming from? But then also understand your customer. And this is, if we can leave you with nothing else, let us leave you with this: know your customer. And I don't just mean know their names. I mean know what's important to them, not what you think is important, but what actually is important. What causes them to leave, and even more importantly, what causes them to stay. So the customers that you have, why are they staying with you? And level that up with, are your most profitable customers? So going back to, remember, Steph talked about total lifetime value. Who are they? Are they staying with you? And why are they staying with you? Then you can ask questions such as, how could we capture more from the best customers we work with? We know this segment is really important to our business. How do we do more business with more customers like that? And then what are my current business drivers? All right, I'm going to open up. Steph, do you have anything else you want to add on that right there?
No, that's fantastic.
Okay, cool. I want to make sure we capture all of this. This really assessing I would say you don't have to stop by, start by solving world peace, right? So don't think we have to assess all the things, but these are some great questions to start with. So from there, we've assessed, we've got this information. What's most important to us? Well, you're going to identify what's really critical here. So if we think about that total lifetime value, so maybe it's identifying, wow, these customers are really valuable to our business. We understand why they're valuable to our business. They mean the most. So how do we categorize that information? What decisions do I need to make? Do I need to track information differently? So maybe you assessed it, but it was a very arduous process, and frankly, you're not sure how you're going to keep on doing it consistently. So those are the things you might think about in identifying. I need to identify how I'm going to do this. And then how do you gain more from the customers that you have? Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit. Love low-hanging fruit, especially when you're starting an initiative, because let's start there and then we can work our way up to the top of the tree, right? From there, we create the plan. So a couple of key things when creating a plan. Always set clear goals. What are you trying to accomplish? And then think about your messaging. Is it clear and is it important to the audience? So when you're creating a message, it can't be important just to you. It has to be important to the group that you're going to reach. And this is critical as well. So when we're thinking about how we're more consistent, and we can't just hire another 10 people to do the things that we want to do with this initiative, What technology do I need to make this happen? So what systems need to be connected? Do I have the right systems in place? Am I missing something here? So whether it's an integration where I have information in 2 different places or duplicate entry, those are things that you can, all right, I create a plan. I need to change these things, move these things, add these things. From there, I can get my buy-in and assign ownership. And this is something I think that we take for granted often in initiatives. Well, everybody just knows. Well, are you reporting the results to everybody? Who's going to continue driving those results? Who's responsible for that? Who is going to be held accountable for the numbers? And then what does each person or group own? When you're doing initiatives like this, it really incorporates your entire business. Do your technicians know what they're responsible for? Do they know how they affect the results that the organization's reporting out to them? Does your customer service team understand that? And then are your managers measuring and reporting back to their teams? You measure what's important, right? We measure what's important. From there, we can identify, man, I need some expertise here. So there might be some internal resources that maybe you already have some, so you might have an expert in a particular area, but that's not a part of their current role and responsibility. And you have to carve out a part of their time and allocate it to that. But then there might be areas where you really lack insights and knowledge and skills. Maybe it's around messaging, maybe it's around technology or business intelligence. And this is where partners like Cargus and others will come and help you think through those things. And this may be a big project. This may be a small project. This may be a conversation with a consultant or a quick analysis, or we like to do a lot with our customers is walking through process mapping. So really mapping your process from start to finish, something as simple as that, where you get that result and can actually take action on it. From there, we talk straight go to execution. So we've got the plan, we've partnered with our experts, we know who's accountable for these things, we know what we're trying to accomplish. Couple of things when you think through the execution of the plan. Don't be afraid to A/B test. So test thoroughly. Just because you've initiated something, maybe you start with a sub-segment of your group and roll out certain types of benefits or restrictions. Give it some time. Like, don't just roll it out, flash in the pan. Everybody hates change. Everybody will complain about everything all the time. We all know this. So don't give it a week, but give it some time to test what interactions are working or not working. Be sure that your goals are attainable. So you may have some lofty goals, right? Stretch goals, but make sure you have some that are attainable. Like maybe it's just deadlines, it's start dates you're going to do things. Then generate those metrics, report those metrics out. You've created what you want to report on. You know who's going to get that report. Are they getting it consistently? Again, going back to technology, this can be automated. And if you think that you have to have someone in an Excel spreadsheet typing information in, then you need to talk to us. We will help you, but you really don't. There's so much great functionality in new products right now. And I'll say it's so much simpler than it used to be for creating reporting. It really is streamlined. Then you can report to those stakeholders. So not just to the end user, the people executing or being measured, but those stakeholders up. So you've seen this in consumer. How much money do you save by switching to Progressive? Right? Okay, they're already telling you. Those are some of those stakeholders too. So you can have that communication, that message with your customer. You can have it with your vendors. You can also have it with your team and your management. But then you really start the process over again. So from here, we've executed on this plan. Let's go back to that assess. Are we thinking about the right things? Are we setting the right goals? What are those next layer of expertise that we want to drive forward, and what do we want? All right, so I think that carries us through. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this one?
No, I think we just need to, going back to our main premise around consistency and empathy and effort, right? And so linking this all back, when Esther was talking about the goals and the reports, right? Making sure that everybody's working off the same page and that there's clarity amongst your team about what those goals are and where to find out how they're doing. It seems really simple, but if you're giving your folks a goal of, creating, having X amount of calls or personal reach outs, but there's no way, to actually see how you're doing against that goal very easily, then, you need to make sure that information is not only just available to your supervisors and your managers, but for the actual people in the field doing that kind of work. So it's just kind of remembering that, and that's where technology actually so additive with that
Yes.
goal.
Yeah, and I'll just jump on that. For example, this is something we do here when we look at the activities base. So we have our sales team or our customer service team that's interacting. We actually track the activities. I can see how many leads came in. I can view how many activities and touch points did people have. That's all automated. I don't have to dig in and count anything. And the fun thing is, because the team is in the system constantly, they're just going in and logging it. It's just a part of their interaction. There's no dual entry. In fact, it's gotten so far as now, when you send the email to the customer to follow up on something, it's automatically tracked. Now we can even make it more streamlined because there's some cool tools in CRM platforms such as Dynamics and HubSpot, where my sales team can create automated tasks to accomplish, emails to go out. So there's all kinds of things we can automate, and our customer experience team can automate, that really makes the activities streamlined. And then on top of that, those activities feed straight into your reporting. Into your reporting.
Yep.
So you don't have this, what I remember back in the day, right? People were logging on an Excel spreadsheet, log how many times you did the thing, report how many times you did the thing, that somebody has to take all the papers or all the files, and they have to count all the times we did the thing, and then we give a report once a month on all the things that we did.
Never a good thing.
That's just not, that's not where technology is. You can have really hour by hour updates on the thing and how much that was.
No, just wanted to add that piece.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Problem.
Yes.
All
We're
right.
a great team.
Here we are, absolutely.
All right, so I think we're to the Q&A session of this. Again, wish I could see everybody's smiling faces, but that's okay. We will take your questions, so please shoot that over to the team, and Emily will let us know if we've got anything in there.
Did we have polls? Did you remember?
We did have a couple at some point, but you guys just were on a roll.
We're blasting through things.
It's okay.
We put them
To
out there.
prime everybody a poll, but
It's
all
okay.
good.
That's okay. All right.
No, but yeah, again, thank you guys so much. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat right now. We are happy to answer any of them too. So go ahead and put a couple of those guys in.
Okay, excellent. And I can go ahead and stop sharing our screen for now, since you guys don't really need to see the Q&A. You know that you should be asking questions.
And yes, Steve, we will be getting a recording of the webinar. Everybody's going to get a recording of this about like an hour or so after this.
Yes. And in addition, we can make sure that our contact information, if you have questions for Steph and I, we're here, happy to chat with you.
You know where to find us.
Yeah, we know where to find us. We also be happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. We're both pretty active, and Cargus is quite active on LinkedIn. So feel free to look us up there too.
Absolutely. I'm also kind of curious too, in terms of, since you guys have been working with CRM for so long and customer experience, what are the biggest things that you guys see changing, and what do you see the future of the customer experience going? I think a lot of people are assuming now with like AI that people are going to have a lot of things where, oh, everything's going to be automated and you're never going to be speaking to a real person. How do you guys view that?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think it's actually given opportunities to have more meaningful personal interactions, right? Because there are a whole bunch of people out there, and this might actually go back to that customer segment and different journeys, customers who maybe don't want to look at Cargus or people like us as a strategic partner, right? We're just more on the vendor side of things, and they want to kind of have that lane, that experience. Well, that's where AI could really really go into play, right? Between all the knowledge-based articles and like even our self-help quoting or other things, that customer could have that kind of experience that they want, right? Because they want some products and services, but they don't necessarily want to have those deep relationships or want to expand upon the product they already purchased from us, right? They just want to kind of set and forget. Well, there should be a lane for that, right? But it's a costly customer experience model to have like assigned people like trying to go after those customers and have a couple times a year on-site visits or phone calls when the customer doesn't even want that. Exactly. They're like, just leave us alone, right? So I think that's where you can really look at those different journeys, pick your flavor, have the customers be more empowered to say, this is the kind of way I want to interact with you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. We've heard some customers actually have that conversation. They want to engage with the customer the way the customer wants to be engaged with. And I think that there's a couple of things that play into that. One is generational. One is the region that you're in. So like, frankly, if you're in the South, in Texas, the experience that customer wants may actually be different than it is in the Northeast, but it enables you to have that type of differentiation. And when it comes to AI, so there's some really fascinating things that we're seeing companies do with AI, especially on the customer engagement side. And to Steph's point, it's so much more powerful. So if you think about this, let's say a customer comes and asks you a question about what type of unit that they had installed and when was the last time they had a service check done on it. So how long would it take your customer service rep to find that information? Well, in new technology, by linking your systems, it could be as simple as that phone rings. They pick it up, and because you've linked your customer engagement platform with phone service, you're actually seeing it pulls up there immediately every bit of information that is relevant. And as they ask a question, you can type that question into AI and it pulls the data in normal language. And I think that's where we're seeing AI play the most advantage, is that you can ask questions in normal language as opposed to navigating to a place and finding a thing. You can type in certain bits of information. When's the last time we quoted this? So for example, customer comes in, I need a quote for this thing. Well, if this customer service rep doesn't have access to the information, or has to dig around to find the last quote for the thing because there's 5 things quoted, when's the last time we quoted an air conditioner? That information automatically pulls up. That you can talk to them and say, well, we actually just quoted you this 3 months ago. Right. What's your status? Have you had other quotes? What are you trying to accomplish with it? Like, is our quote still good? Is it still valid? Yeah, you can still use that. We could have a technician out on Thursday. So I see AI as really enabling people and customers to have a better me experience.
Absolutely. And another thing is too, with all these tools that we have on hand, so it might seem overwhelming sometimes too, especially maybe if you were originally a smaller business and you're getting more and more people on board, or you still want to be more of that smaller business where maybe you were doing something on an Excel sheet for a while too, still see it sometimes. What level of expertise should you have, especially if you do want to work with Carcass, of maybe if you're not as technically savvy or you don't have somebody who's able to maybe be on top of that? How is Carcass going to help you guys? Is there an education process with that?
Yeah, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. No, there is. So a couple of cool things. When I think about, so I've run a lot of teams where we had external outsourcing and then internal resources. And I always think of what are the things that are so business critical and strategically aligned that I need to keep internally to my organization. So this would be any kind of long-term relationship building. Do you have a lot of products and things internally that you want people to know about? And then outsource other components of that. So if you're a small business and you haven't been as tech savvy, let's say you're still doing stuff pretty much on paper, that's kind of our wheelhouse. We transition a lot of people from a nothing to a something. And we also subscribe to that crawl, walk, run methodology. So for example, we'll have customers and I want to do all these marketing things. I'm like, well, do you have somebody that owns marketing in your organization? No, but we're thinking about it. I'm like, time out. Let's work on that first. But but anybody can start on a basic sales. HubSpot's brilliant for this. We're really finding in the Carcass energy space. It's such a great tool. There's our lights go out again. I'm talking with my hands.
You start jumping around a little bit more.
I'm gonna have to. So it really, for HubSpot, for example, it can be your customer service. It's such an easy platform to use. You can make it a very straightforward interface. So you're just plugging in a few bits of information and you've created a sales process by which you can actually follow up with customers. And because there is some standard out of the box kind of functionality around creating follow-up tasks and emails, it really makes it simple. But then you can grow from there and say, oh, we're not gonna necessarily bring on a marketing person, but we're gonna contract with somebody to do some marketing for us. Well, that's great. Now let's add in this another layer of technology and partner. And that's the other nice thing about Carcass is we play well with others. So we want to partner where we're not a marketing agency. We're not going to be that. So we want to partner with who makes sense for you and help you empower their technology or their customer experience. They're going to create strategies around customer experience for you. You're going to have the people internally with the know-how, and then we're going to make sure the technology is there to back it all up and tie it all together.
Yeah, sometimes technology can seem scary, but it makes your life so much easier. This is not a question, but you guys did get a a shout out from Shania Montgomery. Our company started with Cargas Propane Co, last September. As we said, no one likes change, but I have to say as a CSR, it totally changed my job in so many ways. It's great. So
Excellent.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Yay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear. That's fantastic to hear. Absolutely.
Yeah, that must be really great to be able to have those opportunities to kind of focus on those other things. But those are kind of some of the questions that I had, especially kind of the marketing side too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Customer
excellent.
experience directly goes in there. But if there are any other last minute questions, feel free to put it in, but we're also available here. So feel free, of course, Esther and Steph would love to connect on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Available by email, so you guys will be getting an email about an hour or so after this as well. So feel free, as you can tell, they're very passionate about it too. So they would love to chat about it as well. But yeah, again, just thank you all so much for taking the time every day to show up. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate all of your time. And Esther and Steph, you guys have been great as well. So
Thank
Thank you. Thanks, Emily, for all your help.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.